Hello and welcome to the October meeting of the Australian Zonta Says Now think tank. My name is Carol Theobald and I'm speaking to you today from the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people in Western Australia. I'll be hosting today's meeting with the help of Bernadine Guy in the New South Wales, Sandra Burns in Victoria, and potentially Sandra McLean in Queensland. We'll just see if she's been able to get to the computer today. The theme of today's meeting is exploring nature-based solutions. Before we begin, I'd like to cover some housekeeping. Say hi in the chat and tell us where you're calling from today. And please use the chat line to make comments, keep your microphone on mute, ask short, succinct questions, and use welcoming and inclusive language. Thank you. Today is the International Day of the Girl. We know that climate change makes poverty, inequality and violence worse for women and girls. And in some countries, for every 10% increase or decrease in rainfall, there's a 1% increase in child marriage. And we know that a 1-degree increase in annual temperature increases violence against women by up to 7%. And we know that in some countries, girls walk miles each day to collect water and wood, and the floods and droughts make them walk further, giving them no time to go to school. So on this Day of the Girl, remember they are why we do what we do with Zonta Says Now. And also today's a special day for Faith O'Brien because it's also her birthday. So happy birthday, Faith.
Happy birthday, Faith.
So this is why we do. Anyway, today we have our special, after our welcome and introductions, we have a special presentation by Charlotte Sterrett from the World Wildlife Fund, some discussions and some updates with our news. So I'll hand over to Sandra Burns from Victoria to start with our welcome and introduction.
Thanks, Carol. I'm speaking to you today from Wurundjeri country in Naarm in Melbourne, and we acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in all the places that we're meeting today. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We usually acknowledge a female First Nations leader at the start of each meeting. Today we're acknowledging Dr. Terry Yunke, a proud Uruthieri woman from Cape York and Miriam woman from the Torres Strait. Terry is one of Australia's leading Indigenous lawyers and authors. She is the Solicitor Director of Terry Yunke and Company, the nation's largest and oldest Indigenous-owned law firm specialising in Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. In 2019, she completed a PhD at the Australian National University titled True Tracks, Indigenous Culture and Intellectual Property, Principles for Putting Self-Determination into Practice. Her 2021 book, True Tracks, distills over 20 years of guiding governments, businesses and communities to respect and protect Indigenous knowledge and culture. The book paves the way for respectful and ethical engagement with Indigenous knowledge and cultures. Now, to get our brains into gear today, we're going to have a poll. We'll have two quick polls. The first one's asking, what do nature-based solutions mean to you? So you have to choose the one that suits you, fits best to your view. Working with nature to tackle climate change, planting trees and protecting habitats, community-led environmental action with social benefits. And if you're not sure yet, and you're here to find out, so you could click that one. So there's the poll. So what do we want to do? Yeah, right.
Working with nature to tackle climate change.
Here we go. Just choose your option.
Yeah, choose your options.
The one that speaks to your heart the most.
That's what Bush Heritage do, don't they?
Okay, right, I think we're there. That's it. All right, I'll end the poll. Share the results. Can you see the results?
Yes, we can see. Working with nature to tackle climate change came out at 54%. planting trees 15%, community-led environmental actions 23%, and not sure yet was 8%. Yeah, I think people have got a fairly good idea of what we're going to be talking about today, I think. Okay, so
the second one.
We'll go to our second poll. So, what do nature-based solutions mean to you? Or working with nature to tackle climate change, planting trees and protecting habitats, community-led environmental action with social benefits. Not sure yet, and here to find out.
What do you reckon?
No, I think, did you do the second poll? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've just read that.
First one?
Yeah, so sorry, I think I read the wrong ones out. Yeah. Advocating for gender response policies. The wrong one came up on my screen. Partner with local groups, educate and inspire communities, led by example, more plants in every meeting room, and not sure yet. So sorry about that, everyone. So that's how do you think Zontans can make their biggest impact?
So can you see the results?
Yeah. Yes, we can. And 46% of people said to advocate for gender responsive policies. 23% partner with local groups on restoration. 15% educate and inspire communities. 8% lead by example. Led by example, having more plants in the meeting rooms, and not sure yet was also 8%. So thank you for being involved in that poll for us. And okay, are we finished there?
Yes, we finished the polls.
Okay, so we'll just. Oh, sorry, we're still sitting on mine. So I'm actually going to hand over to Bernadine Guy, who's the District 24 Governor now. She's going to introduce our guest speaker.
Thanks, Sandra. It's my pleasure to welcome today's guest speaker, Charlotte Sterrett. Charlotte is the Senior Manager for Community Resilience and Adaptation at World for Wildlife Fund Australia. With over 2 decades of experience, she leads WWF Australia's Community Resilience and Climate Change Adaptation Programming and Policy Engagement. Charlotte is a champion of inclusive conservation and a subject matter expert on high integrity, socially inclusive nature-based solutions to climate change. She's accountable for the flagship program, Climate Resilient by Nature. Previously, Charlotte served as the Yarra Riverkeeper, advocating for the health and protection of Melbourne's iconic Yarra Birrarung River. Many of you would remember Charlotte sharing her experience as the Yarra Riverkeeper when she spoke at our August 2023 think tank. Please join me in warmly welcoming Charlotte Sterrett.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this works because I've got a presentation.
Good.
Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me back. I must have done an okay job last time. I can't believe it's been 2 years though. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, so my previous role, I was the Yarra Riverkeeper. I still live by the Yarra or the Birrarung in Warrandyte. So still plays a very, very big role in my life. And for those of you who know, there was the 3rd annual Birrarung River Fest in the month of September. It's just finished on World Rivers Day a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, lots of love for the river. But today I'm going to talk about nature-based solutions. And we love our new words, our buzzwords, and nature-based solutions. When I first heard it, I was like, "Oh, what's this? What's this all about? Is this something new?" And in fact, it's actually not new. It's something that people have been working with nature forever. Because if we didn't work with nature, we wouldn't be able to survive on planet Earth. But it's a reimagining of that, particularly in light of climate change and environmental degradation and biodiversity loss. It's this reimagining to say, well, how do we work with nature rather than against nature to solve some of the world's largest challenges? And that's what nature-based solutions are. It's nature helping us address some of our big societal challenges. And the poll before was quite interesting, I thought, because nature-based solutions can be all sorts of things because there's lots of different societal challenges. But today I'm going to speak about climate change as the societal challenge that nature can help us with. But nature can help us with lots of things: food and water security, disaster risk reduction, you name it. If only we'd pay attention. So, and I'm going to talk specifically about the Climate Resilient by Nature program, which is a program funded by the Australian government in 10 countries in the Asia Pacific region. Before I do that, I just would like to acknowledge that the country that I'm speaking from, which is Wurundjeri country, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and really say that their continuing connection to culture and land and water as a real a lesson for us, because they've been working with nature and using nature-based solutions for tens and tens of thousands of years. So it's going to be a quick presentation because we want some time for discussion. The first part is really going to be explaining what nature-based solutions are, and I've got hopefully a video that will work. If the video doesn't work, I'll explain it. Then we're going to look at nature-based solutions in action in the Climate Resilient by Nature program. And then we've just got some kind of key takeaways, and then it's over to you guys for some questions, and hopefully I'll have some answers for you. But I'm going to play this video and hopefully it works. So let's see.
Life is full of challenges, but sometimes nature can help. Though probably not with my homework. Nature-based solutions are activities that take care of or restore natural areas and help solve challenges in our communities, like protecting people in cities when there's extreme weather, providing food and clean water, and even helping fight climate change. Flooding from extreme weather can be reduced or even avoided by taking care of and restoring nearby wetlands. Healthy wetlands act like a sponge, allowing them to hold enormous amounts of water. So when lots of water comes, wetlands can absorb a ton of it, helping reduce flooding and keeping people safe. Nature can also help provide good food and clean water. Bringing back natural areas helps increase the number of bees and other pollinators. Pollinators are very important for growing fruits and vegetables, so more pollinators can mean more food. And when natural areas like these are next to rivers and lakes, they help prevent dirt, oil, and other pollutants from being washed into these bodies of water when it rains. This keeps rivers, lakes, and the drinking water they can provide much cleaner. Nature-based solutions also help fight climate change. In fact, some nature-based solutions are designed to do just that. These are called nature-based climate solutions. Nature-based climate solutions restore or protect natural areas, which can capture and store large amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. When natural grasslands are restored, their roots store large amounts of carbon in the ground. And when forests are protected from development, the carbon they stored in their trunks and branches stay there instead of being released. These are just a few of the many ways nature-based solutions are already helping. We depend on nature. And if we take care of it, it will help take care of us. So when you and I support nature-based solutions in our communities and around the world, we are using the power of nature to help keep people fed and safe, protect nature, and fight climate change. Like
All right, so a video, what is it they say? A picture speaks 1,000 words. So hopefully that was useful. There are some great videos out there, but I like that one because it's quite simple. But yeah, I guess the overall message is that if we work with nature, we can solve some of our big societal issues. And for us, and for this group, climate change is the biggest one that we have at the moment. So I'm going to talk about Climate Resilient by Nature, which is a program that I manage that operates in the Asia Pacific region in 7 countries in the Pacific and 2 countries in the Mekong in Vietnam and Laos. And it was developed back in 2021 and launched at the UNFCCC meeting back then. And it's really about, addressing supporting communities to adapt to climate change. So while the video talked about mitigation or reducing carbon emissions, for people in developing countries, their biggest issue is climate change impacting on their lives and livelihoods, food and water security, disasters, etc. So the Climate Resilient by Nature program has been developed to help people adapt to climate change and have benefits for people and the planet. So the goal of the program really is to through the promotion of NBS to help communities be more socially, economically, and ecologically resilient, and that's important. So it's socially resilient, economically, and ecologically. But here's a bit of an overview of the program, and you can see there's quite a few countries. So originally there was 3 countries in the Mekong, Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia. The Cambodian project's finished, but we've got a project in Timor-Leste, projects in Vanuatu, Fiji, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, and Samoa. And they're all different because nature-based solutions have to be place-based. So they have to, first of all, you have to identify a challenge that's being experienced by your community. And then you need to see what nature exists around you, and then identify how nature can help you with that challenge. So that's what we've done. The program is coming to an end. Actually, the first phase is anyway at the end of December, and I just wanted to give you some quick figures on what's happened across those 3.5 years. So there's over 10,000 people across 150 communities have been involved in the CRBN program and the different projects. And over 3,000 people across 64 communities have been engaged in nature-based livelihoods. And by livelihoods, I mean work that allows people to have a subsistence, so growing their own food or an income. As you can see, activities range from animal keeping, aquaculture, tourism, environmental management, and agricultural production. And I'll go into some of those in a bit more detail in a moment. It's seen 43,000 hectares of land and seascapes protected or restored. And we've seen the increases in community resilience across those ecological, economic, and social areas. The program has worked a lot with governments and also private sector and done a lot of awareness raising around nature-based solutions. And around, as we said, there's a good split between women and men. Slightly more men at the moment have been directly involved in the project, but of those, over 1,000 have been young people and 345 people with disabilities. So that's just a snapshot. And in fact, that information is about 6 months old because we're just doing our next 6-monthly report, and those figures have gone up a little bit more. So what I thought is it's always hard if you haven't been to those countries to kind of know what's going on. And living in Australia, we might have certain ideas about what NBS is. But for people in developing countries or in resource poor settings, NBS are really very much there to help them have a more sustainable livelihood. And I'm just going to flick through some slides with some nice photos showing you what the different types of NBS are. So this is a picture of Andy. And she works at the Catholic Relief Services in Timor-Leste. This project is around agroforestry. So agroforestry is where you plant plants that you can grow for agriculture in the same places that you have forests. So usually it's done on degraded land where they're trying to restore forests, but they need to grow plants for food at the same time. So you can see here, this is a fruit tree that's been planted in a larger forest. And with this project, it's really trying to stop the slash and burn type agriculture that tends to happen in Timor-Leste, which causes more erosion and more flash floods and things like that. So teaching people how to have more mulch, plant the right types of trees, stabilize those slopes because it's very hilly. That's that one. The next one is Action Aid Vanuatu. I'm actually going to Vanuatu on Monday to visit this project. And this one is they work with over 1,000 women in 2 islands, Erromango and Tanna in southern Vanuatu. And they are working on agroecology. So similar to agroforestry. Agroforestry is a subset of agroecology. Agroecology is about restoring environments, but in a way that also helps people grow food for themselves and to sell that. So they've been doing a lot of tree planting, reducing erosion, doing some mangrove work to reduce disaster from storm surges, things like that. And it's all with women in their communities. And so those women are really learning some valuable skills, and they've set up a women's alliance across Vanuatu. And in fact, once the first phase of Climate Resilient by Nature finishes, they're having a second phase of this program, and it's going to expand to Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. So this one's been quite successful. Another nature-based solution is mangroves. So mangroves, as you know, well, you may or not know, but they grow in coastal areas in salt water or very brackish water, and they provide nurseries for fish. They also reduce erosion, stop storm surges, all sorts of things. So where you see mangroves being destroyed, you'll see lots of disaster impacts. So World Vision Solomon Islands is working with communities to replant mangroves and bring back those fisheries and reduce the disaster risk that's happening there. The next one is this is excuse me, Marioni, and she is from a community in Loru in Espiritu Santo, which is in the northern part of Vanuatu. I visited that project last year, and theirs is a little bit different in that they're restoring forests but being paid through Plan Vivo and carbon credits. So the community is restoring their forests, which they've been wanting to do anyway, and receiving about $30,000 to $40,000 a year in carbon credit money, which doesn't sound like very much, but for this community, it's really helping them repair roofs on schools, get wheelbarrows in, set up small shops, get solar in, put in water tanks, all sorts of things. So they're using nature, restoring nature, and nature's giving them all these other benefits through these carbon credits. And it's not a huge project, but the community of around 300 people have been doing this work for about 10 years, and it's quite tremendous. Another nature-based solution is working in Fiji, but also Solomon Islands, where they're developing livelihoods. And the 2 livelihoods they are working on is sea cucumbers or beche de mer and sea grapes. So these are things that they would normally grow and eat themselves anyway, but they are restoring the habitat that these sea grapes and sea cucumbers grow in. So it's increasing the amount of sea grapes and sea cucumbers they're able to have. And then they using value add to turn some of those products into soaps and lotions and things like that. And as you can see, it's there's a lot of women doing that work. So nature's helping them to earn that livelihood. This is a picture of the ladies at the launch of their sea grape business, which was from last year. Another one is quite an interesting one, and you may have heard of this, but it's we've had a lot of coral bleaching in Australia, and a significant amount. But we know that there are places around the world where corals tend to be more resilient to heat, and so Kaima are working in Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga, to where they go to places after a coral bleaching event and find corals that have not been damaged, and these corals are more heat resilient, and they retransplant them and grow them in other parts of reefs, and so they're retransplanting them into reefs, and the hope is that these corals will multiply and make those reefs more heat resistant. Obviously, corals take quite a long time to grow, but they're and KUMA isn't the only organisation that's doing this. Lots of places around the world are doing it, but it does offer some hope for corals in terms of seeing that they might be able to survive beyond 1.5 degrees. And you might be asking, what's the MBS for this? Well, they're doing this in places where there are already resorts. So it's an ecotourism opportunity. So they're earning income by taking tourists and teaching tourists about this practice. So again, it's not a huge income, but they're restoring nature and then using that income to support their own livelihoods. Almost coming to the end. It's a bit of a whistle tour of all the different MBS, but this is a project that's in Laos and Vietnam, and they are working on the Mekong and some of the tributaries of the Mekong to restore flood-based livelihoods. So you would know the Mekong Basin is a place where we get a lot of rice from, and it's very intensive. So they would have 3 rice harvests a year, a lot of fertilizers. That 3rd rice harvest, when they do that, they actually stop the river from naturally flooding. So what we've done with this project is work with communities to reintroduce a floating rice, which is a more traditional variety that they can grow and allow the river to flood and have that natural sediment flow, have the fish return, the lotus flowers, etc., etc. And I haven't got a photo of it here, but they've actually managed to market the floating rice and sell it and turn it into noodles and all sorts of things. So it's been really, really fantastic, which means that the natural flow to the river can be returned, which has huge potential. Just to give you some idea of what's happened in terms of ecosystem health, we've got some proxy indicators around, number of hectares with conservation or restoration activities. That's been exceeded, and the number of hectares governed by an improved management model, and that's been exceeded as well. It's fantastic. So it's a small, well, even though the program is worth around $21.2 million and is about 3.5 years old, it's still small in the grand scheme of things. And we would like to see this type of nature-based solution scaled up around the world. So here are some key takeaways. So as you can probably tell, these are all kind of common sense, but nature is our greatest ally, I think, is the number one key takeaway. And that is that the last 200 years of industrialization has drawn us away from nature and natural systems. And we need to come back to that because nature is our greatest ally. And when we work with nature, we can solve some of the greatest challenges. Nature already provides the tools we need. And if we restore nature, it becomes more resilient and makes us more resilient. We all know about trees in urban areas and how they reduce the temperature. There are so many examples of how nature can help us. If we restore our waterways and have vegetation around waterways, we have cleaner water. There's another example. But we need to work together to find those solutions that benefit people and the planet. In the past, we've been very much focused on benefits for people at the exclusion of the planetary benefits, and that's kind of the reason why we're in this climate emergency and this biodiversity crisis. But in order to really turn things around, we need to really scale up and amplify nature-based solutions. And the last takeaway that I have is really around Indigenous communities and local communities. They've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years and not calling it nature-based solutions. It's just life. And there's a lot for us to learn. I think in Australia, we're realizing that in terms of First Nation communities, in terms of their wisdom and knowledge. In the Pacific and the Mekong, we found that too. And we can build on that Indigenous and local knowledge with the scientific knowledge to make these nature-based solutions, yeah, really, really strong. So that's the end of my whistle-stop tour for nature-based solutions. I'd love to hear from you in terms of nature-based solutions you've seen in Australia, or if you have any questions about the specific projects, I'm all ears. Yes, go Vicky.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Charlotte. I think in one of your slides there was reference to aquaculture.
Yes.
I, in the past, have had great hopes for aquaculture. I saw it as a wonderful way of, increasing the availability of food supplies and, environmentally friendly. However, after, the experience in Tasmania in recent years, I now am a bit fearful. Has your project learned anything about the challenges and how to address them of aquaculture?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, isn't it? Because aquaculture or agriculture, there are so many different ways to do that one thing. So there are ways that we have agriculture that's highly industrialized or that's really ruinous to the planet and to those poor, animals who are experiencing that torture. And then it's the same with aquaculture. So with aquaculture, you can have aquaculture that's very industrialized, like the salmon farming in Tassie, or you can have aquaculture that respects the boundaries and the limitations and works with nature. So the aquaculture that we have in our project is working with farmers during the flood season where they're growing their rice, and the floating rice is to actually grow fish, rear fish in that floodwater as well. So it's actually mimicking nature. So it actually works quite well. But then there's highly industrialized aquaculture like shrimp farming, which is very, very ruinous. And that happens in Vietnam as well. But what we're talking about in our project is high integrity nature-based solutions. And that's really about having that integrity of the natural system and working with that. So you could have high integrity salmon farming, but we're very greedy. It's all about making money and reducing and not thinking of long term. So thinking of short-term profits over long-term gain, which is really sad, and that's why we're in this predicament. But yeah, aquaculture can work really well when it's done well. And another example would be in Fiji, on Vanuatu, where they have fish ponds. And that works really well, but you need to use native fish, not introduced fish that then if they escape, they become pests. There's all sorts of examples.
Good, thanks, Charlotte.
Thanks, Vicky.
Are there any more questions? Suzanne.
Excuse me. You're on mute, Sue.
Hi, Charlotte, Sue, and it's Andrew's here as well. So how long have you got funding for this program, and are there hopes that you can take this program elsewhere?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, great question. So originally this program was a $9.5 million program that was, hold on to your hats, was going to only operate for 1 year, which is crazy because you can't do nature-based solutions in 1 year. But everybody knew that, and there was a hope that it would be extended, and it has been extended about 4 times. The phase 1 of the program will finish in December this year, but there'll be a phase 2 focus on the Mekong, but also some of the individual projects within the overall program have got continued funding. So probably about 60 to 70% of the projects have got ongoing funding, but that's an ongoing issue, and we need longer term funding. Because some natural ecosystems respond really quickly and recover, like the sea grapes, they only took about 6 to 12 months to recover. That's not necessarily the case for most, especially land-based systems. They usually take a lot longer to recover. So 5 years plus is ideal, and that's what we're arguing for. But yeah, we're always on the hunt for more money. But we've got $5 million for an extension, a 4-year extension for the Mekong. And 2 of the projects in Fiji and Sols have got 3-year funding, and then the ActionAid one's got 4-year funding as well. And then also the Live and Learn, the COW one, the carbon project I know carbon projects get a really bad rap, and rightly so, but the type of carbon projects we're talking about as very small scale community types carbon projects, which is less about the carbon sequestration and the number of carbon credits, and more about how those communities use that money to really improve their livelihoods and their living standards. When that project gets registered by the end of this year, that will be a 30-year program. So when you have money that lasts, a guaranteed income that's going to last, 30 years, that's when communities can really, really plan. And they're not dependent on that money. $30,000 to $40,000 a year is not very much money, but it's enough to do all the things that the communities want to do, and really provides a buffer for them. Yeah.
Hi, Charlotte. I'm Andrew here.
Hi.
I guess sort of moving on a little bit from that theme, the old chestnut of what happens when you go. Is there sort of knowledge and the systems put in place that the people can then use, and the whole thing just has a life of its own? And perhaps
Yeah.
even better than that, they can tell people and surrounding communities and the rest of it how to do things. Is it sort of got that catalyst
Yeah.
effect?
Yeah, no, totally. But that's also why you need longer term projects in the first place. Because if you only have like a 2 or 3 year project, it's usually not long enough to embed that in the community for, to make it sustainable over time. But then it also is about where you start as well. There's no point, like the communities that we working with and were chosen were already doing a lot of this work anyway. So it's about catalyzing that to get it set up to a point where it can be self-sustained. So, for example, the 2 projects in Fiji and Solomon Islands, which is around nature positive business models, they'll be able to continue that afterwards. The one in Fiji, for example, they've set up a community-owned business, which is owned by eight of the communities that's growing the Beche de Mer. So they've got a board and they set up, and it won't matter whether WWF is there funding that work. That's not necessarily the case for all projects. Sometimes they don't work, and then they fall over. Like for example, the project that I said that finished in Cambodia, that only lasted 18 months. And then that one didn't work. So you can't expect all of them to work, but having it set up so that they're going to be sustainable and able to be run without outside assistance is obviously the main goal. It isn't necessarily the case. Like some of these projects will require ongoing funding, but it won't necessarily need to come from WWF. They'll get that money from elsewhere, including their own governments. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thank you. I think we'll continue. If there aren't any more questions, we'll continue with the program. Thank you very much, Charlotte. It seems a very simple solution when we're working with nature and we're trying to restore it to the way it was, but also importantly, learning from our Indigenous people, as you say, have been doing this for thousands of years. And slowly, I think the message is getting through. And perhaps that's somewhere where Zonta can take a part in helping to broadcast that message. Now we'll move into our discussion and look at what we can do. For our discussion today, we will look at how we can bring nature-based solutions home and explore what we can do here in Australia. We'll put you into breakout rooms for a 10-minute discussion on 3 topics. What nature-based solutions could we advocate for or support in our local communities? For example, urban tree plantings, wetland protection, Indigenous-led restoration, green infrastructure in cities. What can each of us do in our everyday actions to support nature-based solutions? For example, plant native gardens, compost, reduced hard surfaces, conserve water, buy from regenerative farmers. How Zonta clubs can incorporate nature-based solutions into projects, partnerships or advocacy. For example, partner with Landcare, Greening Australia or local councils. Host a native planting event. Support women-led environmental enterprises. We will ask each group to provide one advocacy idea and one personal or club action during the report back. Okay, so what were some of the key points from each group? We have a couple of minutes for each group to report back. So is it, was it Sue, Carol, that you said was
yeah, yourself
okay.
and Sue. So we just had the two groups in the end. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Okay, I'll report back.
yep.
Okay, so we had an absolutely stunning discussion, actually. I think that basically what people were saying is that there are a lot of local groups that are already acting as Charlotte was saying, projects that are already set up that Zonta can become involved with. It may be that we can acknowledge some of those groups that are working in our areas in some way on websites and that, so that is a promotion for them to some extent. A lot of the groups are always looking for people to volunteer, so there may be some possibility of organising a club event or just giving people the opportunity to do that as another sort of group in their lives and things like that. I think I was really inspired by all the projects in local areas that people were talking about and how in many cases the clubs are actually involved in some of those already. So we're just kind of extending that idea. So in terms of advocacy, we can be putting forward local projects. And I think a very good point was made about with new developments, and that came out in the conference in Devonport too, that we should be advocating that these areas need to be livable, they need to be focused on community. So for things like heat stress, which we've talked about before, that's very important. And Pam came up with a really great idea, which was even get down to your own family level and talk about what projects as a family in your local area that you'd like to be involved with. And I think that is actually something that's really interesting to think about, because we're talking about grassroots, so we really need to get to the actual cells, which are families. So yeah, I think that was a really useful discussion for each of us, but also for Zonta as a whole.
Thank you, Sue. Jill, would you like to report back from the group we were part of?
Thank you. Look, we initially looked at the local advocacy, building local advocacy, and we were a bit looking at government planning and things like that, which seemed to be looking at, again, livable or the focus on community, because some of the issues around planning can disrupt wetlands and things like that. But then it was kind of decided that's a hard task to actually advocate to the government. We might be looking at a more positive way where we advocate via some of the existing programs, like the nature-based tourism initiatives that are happening through government and probably local government as well. There was citizen science. So it was sort of saying maybe we should pick up the positives that are happening and see what we can run with to advocate, than necessarily trying to look at the planning system, which I think a lot of very experienced people have been doing for a long time and probably not had the outcomes that we would think are positive. Under the personal actions, it sort of came back to what we want to do within the club. I've noted down things like school-based programs, some nature-based solutions, connecting. Maybe we have a focus for our meetings, which I know our Northern Suburbs Club has a focus on a couple of meetings a year around the climate area, where we can think of some personal things that we can do towards the meeting. Didn't write down a lot there. In the third one, what we could do also as a club, I noted that we have a group called Future Leaders, program, which we use some of the participants in that program, which are year 10 to year 12, year 12 at school. We use them as part of our Women and Achievement Awards, but we've been looking to see how we could better utilise or engage with that group, and it could well be that Future Leaders group, we could partner with them on some of their environmental sustainability projects, which we know they've been involved in. What other ones did we have, Bernie? I think you said something.
Collaborating with the Indigenous community was another local Indigenous people.
That's right. Considering some of the Indigenous groups within our area, also we have a town teams movement that are in many local areas in WA, and they might be groups that we can make contact and see what their activities they're engaged with. Many of them it's tree planting or some climate initiatives. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jill. It's obvious that once you put a few people together, that there's a lot of brainstorming that comes up with some fantastic workable ideas and solutions. Thank you for the valuable discussion. And I will now hand over to Carol to tell, first of all, was there any questions? I did miss that one in the chat line, Sandra. You're on mute.
I didn't know I was meant to be doing that. So no, there weren't any questions.
No. There's two
Sandras.
There's two Sandras.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay, Sandra McLean. I'll do.
Sandra Burns.
Pam put her comments in there about engaging families, and we spoke about that. And Carol just put a comment in about water-wise gardens, and I think that's so valuable that so many communities still use drinking water to water plants, and it's just so wasteful of a rare resource, I think. So good one, Carol. But that's all that was in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the support. I'll now hand back to Carol to tell us what's been happening at the international level.
Okay, well, there's been quite a lot going on as usual. Thanks very much for everyone for their discussion. Anyway, the last international think tank, Intercontinental Think Tank, was all about toxic truths and plastics. If you didn't get a chance to see the meeting, because it was an awful time for us, 2 o'clock in the morning, onwards, they gave some very disturbing facts about how microplastics had been found all through the human body, including blood, breast milk, the brain, and even semen. Researchers have identified 16,000 chemicals in plastics, but only 3,500 have been studied. And of those, we only understand the large-scale impact of 65. So we're dealing with all these things in the unknown. The Global Plastics Treaty stumbled when countries producing plastics wanted more recycling and other countries wanted production caps. So the agreement stalled. So they've sort of trying to continue those, find a way through. In November, our think tank will focus on Earth for All. Could gender equal climate justice stop wars and conflict? And this event is hosted by Zontians from Europe and Africa. And it will feature speakers Luba, a Zontian from Ukraine, and Hadiz, a Young Women in Leadership awardee who fled Afghanistan via Iran and Greece and now studies in Luxembourg. So we'll have some first-hand accounts of what goes on. So anyway, please register today, and you can register via the zonta.org website. Today's their Day of the Girl, so I hope you've actually had a chance to go and follow up on the Zonta International website with the various programs that are available. They have the messages that they were doing, and also the global program to end child marriage webinar that's we've just missed, but they'll have the recording will be on the website. The think tank update, the international one, we focused on the UN at 80 and Climate Week in New York, and the UN Women Gender Snapshot, the Beijing Plus 30 Action Agenda, and a report that UN Women completed on getting more women in leadership positions in the private sector. That was the unfinished business report. And you can download the PDF of the update from the Intercontinental Think Tank page on our Australian website. I always like to plug the art gallery, virtual art gallery. This was our first song entry. So I'll just play a little bit of it. It was the son of a Zontian from Canada with his friend from New Zealand. Can you hear it? I'll just make sure I've got the share sound. There we go. Okay, try that.
Roll on, be still, breathe in, breathe out, hold up.
Hold up, hold up, hold up. Each branch will bear a bud. Hold up, hold up, hold up. Each branch will bear a bud. If it abides as days go by, the life inside will come to light. A little leaf or flower bright to hold up.
I won't play it all, but it gives you a feel of it. And I just hope it opens horizons for Zontians to think it's not just artwork, it's all types of creativity, including the word and song. If you've not seen it already, the International Advocacy Committee has brought out the advocacy training program. There is a 17-minute video that you can use in your clubs, and there's also slides with a script that you can use as well. And it covers these 5 chapters in this session. A second training webinar is also, a training program is also being developed in this advocacy suite of initiatives. If you've missed any of the Project LAHA, the AI seminar, or the global program ones, you can follow the links on International. And the Women and Gender Constituency, who we have an alliance with Zonta Says Now internationally, had a Draw the Line program in September. And they had this amazing, one of the programs was this amazing webinar on militarism and the climate crisis from Baku to Belém. I was just absolutely blown away with this webinar. And if any of you get a chance to watch it, I'll let you, please do so. It's estimated that over 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions are from weaponry wars. And they're not counted in our greenhouse gas emissions totals. So they're not considered as part of the Paris Agreement. NATO spent $1.5 trillion in 2024. And by 2030, they'll be spending 13.5 trillion in the next 5 years on war, on weapons and things. So it's quite staggering. Israel dropped more bombs in Gaza in less than 1 year than were dropped on Dresden, Hamburg, and London combined during World War II. So it's just amazing how much militarization there is around the world, and how much it's leading to people being displaced, hunger, famine in places like Sudan. But this webinar brought a lot of those points together. It was well worth a look. I'm going to hand over to Sandra McLean now to let us know what's been happening with Zonta Australia.
Hi everybody. And Bernie's here too, so if there's anything I missed, you can let me know. But we had a meeting, so we meet monthly. We had our last meeting a couple of weeks ago. Quite a few of our committee members are off. Bridget's off, travelling. Petra is going to the, I think it's District 18 conference in Ghana, in Accra. So she will be meeting Sala there as well. So it'll be really good to get some feedback from her from that conference, because I'm sure the conversations and discussions will be really interesting from that part of the world. So we've had a pretty busy year, and I'll just, so at the end of, so we were formed in June 2024, And so we basically had a year of operating at the end of June 2025. So we put together a bit of a report about what we got up to. So I've just put the link to that report in the chat. But that is also on our Zonta Australia website. So if you just, I can put the link there if you want to as well, but you really just need to, if you just Google Zonta Australia, you'll find it. But we've had quite a good year, I think, of a lot of advocacy through at a national level across some key issues with the federal government. Just recently, Bridget had quite a lot of letter writing that she did, and we're just about to compose a letter to the federal government about the SDG goals, just to ask the question around how the government is, I guess, what's the governance around those, and how each of the government departments looking to, I guess, to keep those goals front of mind, and just want to try and understand how this is being measured. And I suppose this is leading us into hopefully Australia might be successful in getting COP 31. So we will see how we go with that one. But yeah, we've had a pretty good year, very busy year, establishing ourselves. In the next couple of months, obviously, we're coming up to Christmas, but we will be looking at as you know, our Governor General is our patron, and looking at having an event with her in 2026. And we've had a lot of engagement from clubs. We get a lot from asking us to advocate on their behalf. We had a couple of letters from clubs around advocating around medicines for women, and just looking at ways to ensure that I guess there is fair and equitable medicines for women, that supplies are, as you well know, older women, it can be very expensive for them, and we don't want them to be discriminated against. So we put a letter together around that one as well. So that's probably my update. I think we'll meet again at the end of November. We won't be meeting in the last week of December because that's Christmas Eve. So Bernie, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Mute. Yeah.
We just had the highlights of the various conferences. It just appears that they were all very successful conferences with a lot of good content, good speakers, engagement in some important areas. And I think that's about it. So it was a good meeting. Very interesting topics always. So thank you for doing that summary.
Right.
And Carol, I guess, are you going to give us I know you're not going to be at our next meeting, but you're going to put together a paper for us?
Yes, that's right, on collaboration. And it'll be along the lines of some of the things I'll just raise now. So, for example, we have the Zonta Australia update that we did. That'll be coming out in, I'm going to get me the right way around. We're going to have the Australian update will be in odd-numbered months, and it'll alternate with the think tanks, Australian think tanks, in even-numbered months. So I just wanted to remind you of that. We had Australia's National Climate Risk Assessment overview that was published recently, and this diagram I thought was really pertinent for us all to see. It shows in one picture, the increased problems that we're going to be facing. So I think it's interesting to point out disruptions to supply chains. We tend to forget about that as being an issue because that really impacts on us, a lot of us. Crop yields decreasing because of climate change. We've got the extremes of heat with health risks, in particular in the north of the country. The vector-borne diseases coming up. We've got critical infrastructure such as power lines, etc. This is mostly in the eastern states where you're all on the one electricity system, which is makes it quite vulnerable. Water availability and accessibility for towns, ecosystems and agriculture may become limited due to rising evapotranspiration in inland regions and changes in annual rainfall. And then we talk about the coral reefs we have here, which is where what Charlotte was talking about, how we can get the more resistant species of coral to actually seed them in the areas which are getting more at risk. Anyway, it's an interesting diagram, but the report was really very interesting too. So I urge you to have a look at that. I just want to raise the Women Taking Climate Action Awards. The District 23 award is $1,000 a year. It's a district award that's ongoing, and the applications close on Monday, the 20th of October for that District 23 award. And I noticed that District 22 has had a bequest, which they're putting into a $10,000 award, which is wonderful news, and for District 22, which is Queensland. And so we'll wait to hear more about the dates of that, which are as they
Yeah. I asked Petra for you, Carol, and she came back to me to say that they'll be working on them and there'll be some dates in 2026.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so if you know a woman taking climate action that you would like to acknowledge, please, if you're in District 23, put the application in. The international events in Australia next year, we've got Climate Action Week in Sydney in March next year. So we're looking at doing something for that. And also the Women Deliver Conference, there's people are attending that. There's going to be 6,000 women from around the world. And also the COP31 conference could potentially still be in Australia, though Australia and Turkey are still fighting it out. If Australia and Turkey do not agree on, they have to agree by consensus as to which country should host it, it will go to Bonn in Germany. So that's how the rules work. So we hope they get an outcome. Our partners, our allies, the Women's Environmental Leadership Australia, they've got a Tools for Change Makers online event, $45, and that's looking at building high performance teams. And then we've got the Women's Climate Congress has got its members online forum in 22nd of October, and their next book club is in November, but the book is Arborescence. It's about turning yourself into a tree, from what I understand. It's a bit of a fiction story, so I hope it's fiction. And so that's an interesting one. Be aware that it's free to join the Women's Climate Congress, and they've got a lot of things in there. Janet Salisbury will be speaking at the Women in Sustainability Conference in Melbourne in November as well, which I noticed. Gender and Disaster Australia, they've got these short courses for free at the moment because they've have a sponsorship. So they're on face-to-face in Adelaide, Canberra, Wagga Wagga. I don't know where Warracknabeal is. Warracknabeal. Yeah, and Townsville. It must be
Warracknabeal, and it's in Western Victoria.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know even how to say it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, anyway, Warracknabeal. Yeah.
Well, I've been there. Excellent. I've been to a couple of these courses and they're really good. So if you get a chance to join in, there's also the online version too. Please make the most of it because normally it costs a couple of $100 each. Anyway, we're aware there's a lot of focus on electrifying our homes, and the Climate Council succinctly advises that a child living with gas cooking in the home has a comparable risk of asthma to a child living in a household with cigarette smoke. So 1 Million Women's Women Power Programme shows you how to transition your home to solar, induction cooking, EV driving and installing a hot water pump. And they're also calling on governments to support 1 million households to electrify within the next 3 years. Then the other news I've noticed on this electric theme, Rewiring Australia says 5 big things that you can do to reduce 90% of your own direct emissions. And they are listed there. Electrifying your home with solar and batteries, electrifying your driving, electrifying your water heating and space heating, and electrifying your cooking with induction stoves. I went to an event in Perth that Saul was at, and he made this comment. He says, with gas in the house, gas is heavier than air, so it drops down. So the shorter people in the house are more at risk from gas impacts, which is your animals and your children, young children. So he actually was saying, well, he was being quite provocative. He says, gas kills kittens, he said. And so people in the audience were saying, oh, I need to have that on T-shirts. So I thought it was a bit of a comical insight onto a serious subject. The Piercy Foundation has a debate series on converting the energy transition for all Australians, and these are over the next 2 months. And they're looking at, discussions on what success looks like, the consumer grid, national standards, skilled workforce, and digitalising the grid. And the last event's a bit longer than the others because it has a summation by Matt Keane, the chair of the Australian Climate Change Authority. And you can register online at psc.org.au. So thanks to Anne Moffat for sharing that. And it's great to learn that Suzanne Lee is not only the leader of the opposition, first female leader of the opposition, but also a competent pilot. And she kindly donated a mystery flight with her at a recent charity auction. This is where it became interesting because Simon Holmescourt, who founded Climate 200, purchased the flight for $15,000, which went to this charity, and nominated a climate scientist and a young climate activist, Katia Jaluk, to fly with the leader of the opposition. So Katia wants to make the most of this opportunity, and she's taking this open letter with her, seeking an emission reduction target of 75%, and is asking individual Australians to support her. So anyway, I thought I'd just bring that to your attention, as it's an individual thing, but I thought it was the innovative way that people try to advocate, I thought was good. I also noticed this morning that Anjali Sharma, who's spoken at a couple of our think tanks, has been nominated for a 2025 Human Rights Medal. And through Anjali's efforts, the Australian courts no longer question the science behind climate change, and our federal parliament has considered 2 bills to protect future generations from the impacts of climate change. And Anjali was also a strong supporter of the students from the Pacific Islands who successfully advocated for the advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice that confirms states have legal obligations to protect the climate. Anyway, the winner will be announced in December, so I thought I'd share that one. And I also came across this report this morning from the Minderoo Foundation that has a gender equality unit. And this is a gender action plan for the ocean conservation areas, the OCAs, in the Western Indian Ocean. But they do have a mailing list that some of you may be interested. The Minderoo Foundation is very active in the plastic space and also the gender space. And so you can actually subscribe to their emails. The gender action plan gives you these 8 focus areas that they're working on in the Western Indian Pacific, much in line with what Charlotte was doing. So it's really good to see that work amplified. And finally, Sweltering Cities has this dialogue on global heat with India in a couple of weeks' time, 30th of October. So it looks fascinating. So I just wanted to bring that one to your attention as well. So Sandra, was there anything else in the chat line? No, excellent, that's good. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to raise? Any other questions?
Of course, in the chat is Sandra McLean has put up that report from Zonta Australia, so people can click on that if they wish.
That's great. That's great. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to say before we finish off for this today?
Actually,
yes, Vicky.
Carol, in my chat room, there was a Zontian from, I think, the Newcastle and Lake Macquarie Club. I didn't quite catch her name. Was that Pamela Sloss?
Sloss?
Sandra's muted.
Yeah, hang on. No, that was Trisha.
Oh, good. I just would like to get Trisha's email address because she promised to send to anyone interested information about Tiny Forests, the Tiny Forests Initiative. So, Trisha, if you could do that, I'm with the Zonta Club of Perth, but Carol can be our intermediary if necessary.
Excellent.
Yeah,
that's excellent.
I'll send that. Yeah, I'll send it to
Tiny Forest.
Ask me for the report, but I'll also send it so it can get sent to anyone that's interested.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll put the links on the website as well, Trisha, when you send them through. So
Thank you, Carol. Yep.
That'll be great. And yes, we've got a thank you there from Sandra. Good, thank you. Thank you, Sandra, for your contribution. So it just leaves us to our next meeting, which is our guest speaker will be Nikki Lees, Special Counsel in Maurice Blackburn's social justice practice. And she's going to speak about the cases that she's run that champion gender equality, women's rights and climate justice. She's actually helped represent First Nations women in their fight against a nuclear waste dump on their land, and a separate case she's done regarding the right to clean drinking water for First Nations communities. So she'll discuss how law and advocacy can drive gender equal climate action. So really sounds very good. Shall I mention that she's Sue's daughter as well? So we've got the genetic.
Why not?
We have the genetic link as well. So I'm really looking forward to meeting Nikki and learning more about what she does. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to thank Charlotte. She's disappeared, but thanks Charlotte, because she was really good. The work they've been doing is phenomenal. And I'd like to thank Sandra Burns and Sandra McLean and Bernadine Guy for hosting various components of today's event, and also to thank everyone that participated in the group discussions and asked the insightful questions, and to Sue and to Jill for giving the feedback from those groups, which was wonderful. What I'm going to do now is just take the screen off share, so as we can actually just all give each other a wave.
Thanks, Carol. Great, another great job.
Keep breathing, keep smiling, and have fun. And I look forward to all your nature-based solutions that you do, starting in your own back garden.